Today, women make up more than half of the American electorate and are more engaged than ever in our politics. Yet we remain marginalized in government and elective office.
It's important for women to have a voice in this democracy because we see women being disproportionately affected across our society in so many areas.
The reality is the news industry is already gendered. The 19th is working to level the playing field.
Our newsroom is named for the 19th Amendment, but with an asterisk, the recognition of the omission of certain women from the franchise, from access to the ballot.
We are firm believers that all issues are women's issues. Our readers are people who care about those issues, who care deeply about the intersection of gender, politics, and policy, and want a more nuanced approach to that politics and policy journalism.
Hi, everyone, and welcome to Live with the 19th.
With live events and interviews, the 19th is fostering civil conversations and community building that brings our readers into direct contact with the people who represent them.
There's never been a Black woman governor in American history.
I think that our newsroom being as diverse as it is, it means that we're looking and telling stories of women that maybe had not been previously represented in media before.
Our goal is to launch the first newsroom that is truly reflective of the nation's women.
There's more women running now than ever have been before, and people want to be informed.
Because what we know is that women are eager to have conversations about politics and often do not feel like they have a safe space to do that. We want to create that community for women, and we want to create that community for women everywhere.
Newsrooms need to be more inclusive. They need to better reflect their communities. The 19th has the opportunity to do that from the ground floor, and we're not wasting that opportunity.
There's never been a better moment than right now.
The 19th is the newsroom that we've been waiting for.
Hi, everyone, and welcome to Live with the 19th, a virtual event series that gives you a front row seat to conversations at the intersection of gender, politics, and policy. I'm Emily Ramshaw, co-founder and CEO of The 19th, a nonprofit, nonpartisan newsroom that launched this summer with gender equity at its core. Today, we are so pleased to bring you this conversation with Cindy McCain, a businesswoman, philanthropist, and widow of United States Senator, Vietnam veteran, and 2008 Republican presidential nominee, John McCain. Mrs. McCain, a prominent conservative who crossed party lines to endorse Democrat Joe Biden, will be interviewed today by the 19th's Washington correspondent, Amanda Becker. If you like today's event, you can post about it on social media using the hashtag #the19thlive. You can also get notified about future events by signing up for our free newsletter at 19thnews.org/subscribe. Finally, I want to remind you that members make the 19th's journalism possible and free for all. If you're able, please consider supporting us at 19thnews.org/membership. Now, I'd like to introduce my colleague Amanda in conversation with Cindy McCain.
Hi, I'm Amanda Becker, Washington correspondent with the 19th, and we are thrilled to have Cindy McCain here with us today for a conversation about the 2020 election and the pivotal role that women will be playing this year. Welcome, Mrs. McCain.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Thank you so much for joining us. And I will try to make the most of our time. We also have questions from viewers that we want to get to before we finish.
Great.
We will start with the big news of the day. You decided to endorse Joe Biden this year. Mm-hmm. From what I've read and other interviews I've seen, this is actually the first Democrat that you have voted for and backed since you turned 18 and were able to vote. And I know your history with their family, your two families have known each other quite well, but I wanted to hear a little bit more from you about why you felt it was important to get involved and to be outspoken about it.
Well, thank you for having me, and I appreciate what you all are doing. Your website is marvelous, and I love the fact that we are doing something specifically gauged to women and women's issues and political issues that are gauged too. So thank you for doing this. It's wonderful. I, like many other people in the country, most of us actually, sat and watched what was going on, via the news or online or whatever it may have been for the last 3-4 years, and watched this debacle happen. And day after day, the lack of integrity, the lack of compassion, no character. I mean, all the things that we're all very familiar with were occurring within the White House, or are not occurring in the White House, to put it more succinctly. the lack of bipartisanship, the lack of ability to find common ground, and now the lack of it, but the inability to even want to find common ground. All those things combined with what was for me the last straw, and that was when it was told that our president may have said that our young men and women serving in the military are losers and suckers. You can see behind me, I have a blue star flag that denotes I have children serving. I have 2 sons and a daughter-in-law that are in, and I find that not only revolting, that comment revolting, but downright angers me, because as a military family and with kids serving, et cetera, they are anything but that. They are heroes and people that deserve our honor and our trust. So that's why I'm here.
What made you speak out about it? And you could have just quietly backed Joe Biden. You could have just went and cast your ballot. You didn't have to publicly endorse him. You didn't have to. You were in a commercial that the campaign ad on television. Why did you want to be out there publicly for this election in a way that you haven't been before?
Well, I think for a number of reasons. First of all, like everyone else at that time, as I mentioned, I was sitting at home yelling at my television set. And I figured, well, I can't continue to do that. And if I really want to make a difference, then I need to endorse him and do that. I knew that being a Republican woman, and one that is relatively well known, I mean, obviously because of my husband, I felt that I could have some impact. And I am a Republican. I am not changing my party. I'm going to remain a Republican. But my party has left me right now. And I think our party has misguided in many ways. And so it's time not only to make a change within the White House, but to elect a leader that truly is a leader, one that works for the good of the country and not for the personal gain or for a party. My husband, we've known Joe and Jill Biden for over 40 years. And it was fun to watch our 2 husbands on the floor of the Senate kind of get after each other and fight a bit and disagree and agree. And with all that said, they would walk off the floor, shake hands, have a drink, or go have dinner together, because that's what you do. You do it for the country. That's what public service is about. And so I relish that. Those are, quite frankly, now years that are gone. You don't see that at all anymore in the Senate. And it's time that we regain our civility, regain our trust. We as Americans deserve that from our leader. We deserve that. And we're not getting it right now.
So you mentioned as a woman within the Republican Party, and that's what we write about at the 19th. So I wanted to talk about women as part of the electorate for a minute. There are many women like yourself. If you look at opinion polls or surveys that are having second thoughts about President Trump, they voted for him in 2016 in many cases, but they've become increasingly concerned over the past 4 years, especially amid this coronavirus pandemic.
Right.
I hear from a lot of women who are very worried about how things are going. What would you say to a woman who also feels that their party has left them, but might still have reservations about voting for a Democrat in terms of they might not get the policies that they want, or, things might just take a direction that they wouldn't normally approve of in an election? How did you overcome that barrier yourself? And what would you have to say to those women?
Well, as a woman who owns a business, a woman that has a family and now has grandchildren, all of those issues are important to me. But what's most important is the actual leadership advantage in this. And what is that? People don't need to discount women in being interested in foreign policy, democracy, the military, that obviously the pandemic that's going on, because we are very interested in it, because we have skin in the game. Most of us do. So to take a look at a president that completely ignored what the experts were saying on a pandemic and decided that he would put out his message, which is, we're rounding the bend. We are not rounding the bend at all. So I feel like women in particular want a president that will tell us the truth. It might not be what we want to hear, but it'll be the truth. And so we'll know what we're dealing with. And that's where I became so frustrated, is because I knew I wasn't getting the truth. And we deserve the truth. Women deserve the truth. And so I would hope that people would take a look at that and see why I'm doing this. I don't agree with Joe on every issue. I will never agree with him on every issue. But what I do know is that he is willing to work across the aisle, to work in a bipartisan fashion, work for what is important for our country and not what he could gain himself. That's not Joe Biden. He's about the country and about what he can do for the country.
And how have things been for you and your family during this pandemic? Arizona obviously is cases are going up there again right now. We're headed into a winter where, cases are expected to spike in many areas of the country. Right. How have you been faring? How have you been coping just on a personal level with dealing with this pandemic?
Well, like everyone, it can get a little crazy. You're quarantined, you're home, you're in your home. For me, I was in my home a lot of the time, not most of the time, but a lot of the time alone, because my children lived in different places, et cetera. And so it was frustrating at times. I'm human. I love interaction, and that part was hard for me. But with that said, it was the right thing to do. I followed and listened to what the experts said to do and did just that and stayed safe. This pandemic is right in your neighborhood now, and it's coming up the street, and that's a little scary.
Talking about women again, what would you say about the role they're expected to play this year? We hear a lot about suburban women. We hear the president talking about suburban women, mainly lately. That's why they don't like him anymore, and can they please come back into the fold now that everyone is voting? What do you see at stake for women in this election? And, to someone who might say, I don't know if I can wait in line in the middle of a pandemic, I don't have time to vote today. Kind of what is on the ballot this year for women?
Well, what's on the ballot is just what we were talking about. For instance, and women are very interested in this because it affects us globally, and what affects us globally affects us locally. This administration has left our allies on the battlefield. They have completely walked away from treaties that we had signed. And there is such a lack of civility that it's hard for any of us with young children, I have grandchildren, to allow our children to be in the same room that the television is on in. Because you can't, the lack of civility and the crudeness that is taking place is not a good lesson for our children. So it's many, many things. I mean, obviously, this pandemic, by not listening to the experts, has caused a cascade of problems for all of us. And women bear the brunt of that. Let's be very clear, women bear the brunt of it. And so for me, I want a president who has my health and safety, our health and safety in mind, and someone that will truly do what's right with regards to America. Women, in general, I think are grossly underestimated when it comes to a voting bloc. But Joe doesn't underestimate women. And the one thing I do know is that he has talked to so many groups. He has a woman vice presidential pick. He's about not only talking to women, but making sure that women are cared for, that their issues are addressed, that the things that matter to them are addressed and worked for.
You've mentioned being a mother in a military family and the effect that has had on you and the importance that it's had on you. Historically, the military vote, active duty military, has leaned Republican. We have seen a little bit of movement this year in that, maybe because of some of these comments the president is said to have made about members of the military. What do you think specifically is at stake for military families this year? You've talked about our allies, but I assume that there's a lot more there.
Right. Well, I'll begin with the utter lack of understanding of the military. I can honestly tell you, because our two families have a lot in common, but one of the things we have in common is the fact that while Joe was on the ticket as vice presidential candidate and my husband was running for president at the same time, our two sons deployed at the same time for Iraq. We had two sons in combat, and here we were, running for the highest office in the land. And that does something to you as a family. So not only do you begin to understand the issues facing a military family, but you've lived them. And so those kinds of things Joe knows very well, and all too well in some cases too. It's also about making sure that our troops are cared for, not just family-wise, but are cared for, that they are equipped with the kinds of things that they need. And also with a president who understands what it means to send young men into combat and understands that that's not the only thing that we can do, that talking, that negotiating, all those things are very important. And that's not what this administration sees at all. I'll also say that having watched them go through the same thing we were going through, we both compared notes a little bit, and it was hard. It was hard for both of us. And so we certainly understand families that are dealing with this. And also, if I can say the last thing too, would be to understand we still have troops in the battlefield. We still have troops in the Middle East. We've got, they're all over the place right now. And whether or not, how we deal with that and what we do with that. And that of course relies on leadership and relies on someone who understands what's at stake.
You're in Arizona. I was just there for a couple of stories that I was working on before the election. And Arizona is a state that has been changing politically for several cycles now. Mm-hmm. And, there are a lot of Latino voters there. The demographics are changing. Mm-hmm. The suburbs are growing outside some of the bigger cities. The state is mostly rural. You said over a year ago that you thought potentially Arizona may, as they say, go blue this year. What is it looking like on the ground in Arizona? What are you hearing from people in Arizona? What are you seeing? Kind of how has it changed since we voted in 2016?
Well, we've changed a great deal because we're a very transient state now. We have something like 250 families a day moving into Arizona from elsewhere in the United States. That brings with it different political views, different interests, different ideas. And a lot of young people are involved in this now too, which is fabulous. There's lots of young people. So with that said, things are going to change and views are going to change. I think, like any of this, I'm someone last year that didn't think that this president would win. So who knows what's going to happen? I do know that a heavy voter turnout, such as what's happening right now, is a good thing. No matter what, it's great for the process. It doesn't matter which side you're on and which ticket you're going to vote, et cetera. Voting is the right thing to do. And it's exciting to see so many people voting. It really is.
Arizona is a state where for a long time, even before the pandemic and this year, many, if not most of ballots there have been cast via the mail-in voting system. Mm-hmm. And given that has been talked about a lot this year, I was wondering if you could talk about your personal experiences with mail-in voting in Arizona and whether you think that has worked well in the state or not.
Oh gosh, I was astounded at the point in all this when it was said that somehow this was corrupt and all, and that it didn't work, and people didn't know what they were doing, et cetera. I've lived here all my life. They know what they're doing, and this is a very good process, and it includes more people, which is what we want. So I disagree heavily with those that somehow think this does not work, because it's worked beautifully in Arizona for a long, long time. And to me, it's so exciting because it also helps our elderly be able to vote. It's a process that's quite easy in this state, with the exception, as we were talking earlier, of our Native Americans. And that system has to change, and how we can gather their votes.
I'll do a couple of viewer questions from our audience.
Sure.
You talked about how you are still a Republican, even though you're endorsing Joe Biden. You are still a member of the Republican Party, as you have been your entire voting life. And Teresa in Houston wanted to know, do you see a place for young moderate women in the GOP right now, or in the rebuilding or rebranding of it as we go forward?
I absolutely do. And we need moderate women in the party. Listen, this is the party that when I first joined this party was the party of inclusion, was the party of Abraham Lincoln, and one that was kind and thoughtful, among other things. I definitely think there's a place for moderate women, and we need moderate women in this. I also believe in the pendulum a great deal, that this party's gone so far this way that it will swing back because it's left so many of us behind. And as a Republican, I want to remain a Republican, but I believe the pendulum's going to swing back, and we'll see a new Republican Party down the line. At least I hope so.
In 2012, the party did kind of a post-mortem on that election and decided what they needed to do to be successful in future elections. And the Republican Party came out with a report that really encouraged, embracing diversity, bringing more people into the fold. That didn't really happen. Why do you think that the recommendations of that report weren't taken? And do you think now party leaders might listen to that if they're defeated?
I think if I can speak more into 16 and forward, because it was gradually coming this way, it starts at the top. It starts with your leader. And in this case, our leader does not speak well, does not use civilities, does not talk inclusion. Anyone that would somehow think that Latino voters would somehow there'd be something wrong with them. I mean, the comments he made about those coming across the border were heinous. It simply isn't true. And more importantly, we have to include people. That's how you grow as a party. That's how you thrive as a party, is inclusiveness. Those who think that we shouldn't include those of diversity are ones that really don't understand, what the party means and what we stand for.
Another question from Alice in Denver. She wanted to know what you thought of the process that put Amy Coney Barrett on the Supreme Court, not her as a nominee, or as a justice, but about that process, which I know a lot of people have had questions about.
Well, the process is the process as it stands. But let's remind everybody, Harry Reid did the same thing in past years. And so this is on both sides. This happened on both sides. So I think if we don't like the process and the Senate deems that they don't like the process, then change it. But we as Americans, this is the process right now. So like it or not, that's what we've got. So I would hope, I think there was such an outroar about this that possibly they will look at changing the process a bit.
Lisa in San Antonio wanted to know, as a Republican woman, how do we get more young women involved in the process and in the party when they might not like everything that they're seeing right now?
Well, I can say this, we need young people. We need young women more than anything. You can always agree to disagree. We don't have to agree on everything. Part of what the trap that I think the Republican Party has fallen into is this litmus test idea that somehow, if you don't agree with me on 100% of everything, then you're not a real Republican. They call them rhinos or something like that. It simply is it's not only the wrong way to look at it, it's wrong. So I would hope that we can gather, as we move forward from this election, we can gather young people, young women, and begin a new voice of Republican politics, a voice of inclusion and a voice of civility, which is most important.
We are unfortunately already out of time. It always goes fast. Thank you so much.
My pleasure.
Not a question, but Lisa from Orange City says she just wanted to thank you for putting country over party, and that she really admires you and your late husband, John McCain.
Thank you very much. I'm very kind. Thank you, Lisa.
So that's it for us today. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you.
To talk about the election.
All right. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thanks to Amanda and Mrs. McCain for this conversation, and thanks to everyone who tuned in today. We hope you'll follow all of our 2020 election news at 19thnews.org. If you enjoyed today's programming, check out upcoming events and view previous event recordings at 19thnews.org/events. And if you were inspired to support us today, we'd love it if you did that at 19thnews.org/membership. Thank you all again for joining us today, and we will see you back here soon for some more 19th programming.